then these Angirasa rishis are required to do a constant work at their own level, whatever they are doing. They are supposed to do sacrifices. The symbolism is that sacrifice is to bring truth into action. Whatever you do, you try to be truthful in your action. Then there is a further symbolism that there is a period over which if you constantly do it, then the obstruction can be removed. Vritra can be conquered. But the period is a very symbolic thing which is still a secret to me at least. It speaks of period of 9 months. Therefore, they are called Navagvas, period of 9 months. Then they have to become Dashagvas. That is to say, if they do 9 times a given sacrifice, or if they do 9 actions in truth, they come to the battlefield and they can combat, but victory is not attained. It is only when they become Dashagvas, that is the period of 10 sacrifices, if they can achieve it. Normally what happens is that they do not allow you to reach that 10th point. It is something like the story of Ramayana, where Ravana is doing some kinds of sacrifice, puja and recitations, and Lakshmana is supposed to reach there in time, and is obstructed to reach there in time. So similarly here, a kind of a battle goes on, and if you are prepared to do only for 9 times, and if you get exhausted, then you can combat, but you do not succeed. But if you come to the 10th day, if you are able to sustain, and if your duration is long enough, that period, then you are able to do it. Because then what happens is that you get the further help. According to this story, Ayasya comes to help you. This is the story. Angirasas fought for 9 days. They fought but could not succeed. Then they continued, and then Ayasya came. Ayasya is also a very important figure in this battle. And Ayasya, however, helps them, these 9 rishis. And with that help, they discover the 4th realm. Turiyam Svid. This is the word which is used in one of the verses connected with Ayasya. That Ayasya came to know Turiyam Svid, that 4th. Body, life and mind are 3 realms. And with these 3 realms, you cannot really reach the highest. The 4th has to be found out. And when Ayasya comes in the 10th period, then Ayasya discovers the 4th one, and having discovered it, you cross over and you win the game, as it were. The battle is fought. Now this may be a legend and it is a story, but a story told in the Veda is meaningful in the sense that if you examine human life quite closely, and if your aim in the battle is to reach the highest perfection, then be ready for this kind of a battle. Battle will come in life. That is the nature of this human life. Science of living implies that battle of life is the nature of life. Struggle for existence, of which Darwin speaks, was very well known in the Veda, and this struggle for existence has been described. Now, in this process of struggle, you take first of all the help of Agni. When Agni reaches a certain point of growth, then Indra comes to help you. Indra finds out where exactly the goal is to be achieved. Where is the distance, what is the place where the light that you are looking for can be achieved. Now, in this task, there is another figure which comes into the picture. It's called Sarama. It is hound of heaven. There is a being, just as Panis are beings and Vritras are beings, there is another divine, not the opposite side, but the divine help, the hound of heaven, sister of Saraswati and Ila. So this Sarama is the power of intuition. It is by the power of intuition you discover the secret place where the light is to be found. When this happens and Ayasya comes and the fourth one is discovered, by this combination the enemy is conquered. That is why it is very often said, Indra destroyed Vritra. He is supposed Vritra, he is the killer of Vritra. So there is also something of the kind of elimination of the enemy. But elimination of enemy has to be done not by anger or not by revenge. It is because it is obstructing a path and the path is to be cleared, the enemy is to be put aside, and if there is a resistance, he has to be eliminated. This is the Vedic process of the conquest. Again, it's a very long question, a very long answer is needed, but I don't want to go further. Can one attain super consciousness doing daily chores? I think Vedic way of life is a Vedic way of actions. Veda is a synthesis of yoga. It prescribes upasana, namo bharanta emasi, to come every day filled with namaha, with self-surrender. Surrender is one of the important parts of the yoga of the Veda. In all the yogas, surrender is not so important. In Jnana Yoga, for example, surrender is not so important. In Bhakti Yoga, it is the fundamental thing, you might say. In Karma Yoga, not all Karma Yogis are surrendered. They are satisfied with the doing of duty for duty's sake, and that is the highest. There is no question of surrender. But the Karma Yoga of the Veda is identical with the Karma Yoga of the Gita, because Gita is an exposition of the yoga of the Veda. In fact, if one wants to know what exactly is in the Veda, through an illustration of what happens in the battlefield where Arjuna is despondent and refuses to fight, then the answer that Sri Krishna gives is the Vedic answer. That is why if you want to know what is in the Veda in a story form, then it is to be found in the teaching of the Gita. And in the teaching of the Gita, self-surrender to the divine in action, self-surrender to the divine in all your feelings and self-surrender also in the process of knowledge. In all the three processes, self-surrender is a fundamental secret of the yoga of the Gita, which is also the yoga of the Veda. So, in all our chores of life, in any activity, ordinary life, everything, what is ordinary actually? The moment you call divine in your action, it becomes divine action. It's no more ordinary. So every moment, and the Bhagavad Gita speaks of sarvabhavena, in every manner of being, you invite the divine in your life, call him in your life, and you grow into the divine and reach the divine and offer yourself. And then let the divine come into you and divine manifests. And this is why the Bhagavad Gita speaks of sadharmya mukti, not only of ordinary mukti, which is very often spoken of in our moksha, but Bhagavad Gita's mukti is of a very special kind, sadharmya mukti. You, even in action, your action becomes exactly the divine action. In the Bhagavad Gita, there is this concept of divyam janma, divyam karma. Not only the concept of offering to God your work, but you reach a point where the action that you do is himself doing, the divine himself doing it. It's no more you offering the action, but you reach a stage in which your consciousness becomes so transparent and so unobstructed to the divine's will, the divine will itself goes on working through you. In fact, that is the meaning of nimitta matram. You are only the instrument of his action. So, it is that which is prescribed in the Veda, the same as Bhagavad Gita, and therefore you have all the chores of life. In fact, the moment you go on doing them by self-surrender in works to the divine, by inviting the divine in your work, so that ultimately he himself acts in the world through you. Sri Aurobindo gives the analogy of becoming a bow. If you become a bow in a battle, then you have reached that stage which is highest in the Karma Yoga. You are no more the arrow, you are the bow. The arrow is manufactured by the divine. One who shoots is the divine. You are only the bow. The bow does not decide who is the target, whom to kill, whom to shoot. It is he who decides. So when we become as plastic as a bow in a battle, then you have reached that stage where all actions become divine actions. I think this is one series of questions. Then there is one simple question by Beena Agarwal. Yesterday I read this translation, Prancham Yajjam Chakruma Vardhatam Gihi. So here she comments that it becomes bizarre because the translation word for Gihi is not appropriate. If some other word was used, it would not become bizarre. Because according to her, Gihi represents the Vak, which is fourfold, Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama and Vaikari. So, if you simply use the word, it is true, but actually, if you read the printed translation, the word is spelled W-O-R-D, but W is put capital. So that word is real Gihi, not the ordinary word, it is the word. That is to say, Gihi in the Veda, of course, means what you said, Vak. But this Vak, not the Vaikari, but the highest Para, it is that which is meant, and that is why W is put capital. Then there is another Aditya Agarwal. As a layman, how to learn more about Vedas. I don't know how one can learn more about the Vedas. If you read the Gita, I think all that is in the Gita is a summary of the Vedic teaching. I at least find personally that the best way of knowing what is in the Veda and in our language, which is more easy for us to understand, you read the Bhagavad Gita, and perhaps I would suggest to you that Sri Aurobindo has written a commentary on the Gita, the full commentary, which is called Essays on the Gita. And if you can read that book, it will be marvelous. There are, of course, many other small books on Veda, but I find actually the Veda to be a very difficult work. And but it is something which has to be restored. It is difficult, it has to be studied. And the only book I can suggest as a real good friend is The Secret of the Veda, written by Sri Aurobindo. It's a difficult work, but the message of the Veda is no more remain a layman. As a layman, I want to know about the Veda. So the first message of the Veda is, do not remain any more layman. Our life demands that you should rise. The great word in the Veda is Arya. To be Aryan is to cease to be a layman and to rise high and to climb up. So do not remain a layman and really try to learn the Veda.